everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made using the November My Creative Scrapbook Limited Edition kit. For this layout, I'm starting off by making some shakers. On one of the My Creative Scrapbook exclusive cut files, there was the letter O, and the O was an ornament, and I decided that I was going to use that ornament and create a number of shakers. I started off by making 5 shakers. I only use 4 of them on the layout. For these shakers, I cut out 3 different parts. I cut out a base, which I cut out of the pattern paper, and I just did that by tracing around the outside of the cut file ornament and then hand cutting it out. I also have a piece of acetate, and I cut the acetate out by hand too in the same way. And then there's the ornament that I used my Silhouette Cameo to cut out. And I cut it out, as you can see, in a couple of different sizes. Along the edge of the pattern paper ornament, I placed some very thin 1/8 inch foam tape. Here I'm peeling off the top layer to expose the adhesive. And then I'm going to take some sequins from my stash and I'm going to pile them in the center of the shaker. I don't want them to stick to the adhesive. A couple always do, and I pull them off, but the goal is to keep them away from the edge. I had this pretty mix of silver and gold sequins, and I thought that those would look pretty inside of a Christmas ornament. I'm using my scissors to try to pile all the sequins in the center, and then I placed the acetate circle on top of the adhesive, and now I'm trialing the cut file ornament on top of that. I was a little worried that you'd be able to see a lot of the foam from the top, but it worked out just fine. And now I'm just trimming a little bit of the foam tape away just so that you can't see it from the front of the ornament. Using glossy accents, I put a very thin line of this adhesive on the back of the cut file. I want it to stick to the acetate, but I don't want to overdo the adhesive because I don't want the glue to leak and make a mess on the acetate, which has happened to me a few times in the past, so I'm trying to be very conservative with my application of this glue. Once I had the adhesive on the back of the cut file, I placed it down over the top of the shaker, and that completes the first shaker. I'm going to repeat the same process 4 more times, although like I said, I only end up using 3 more of the ornaments. I varied the sequin mix that I used in each one of the shakers. You can see that the 3 other shakers all have some red sequins in them. To add a little pizzazz to the snowflake shakers, I'm using some Paper Studio iridescent dots. I love the way these dots remind me of snow. They're white and they have a beautiful multicolored cast to them. So I thought that these would be just the right dots to use on these snowflakes. The snowflakes have little circles all over them, so I use those as my guide, and wherever I saw a little circle, I stuck a jewel. I had to use more than 1 pack of these jewels because most of the jewels are on the larger side, so I had to go into a second pack and choose all of the smallest jewels. I wanted the top to be silver, so I used some silver paint that I had in my stash. It didn't really have fantastic coverage. You could see that the tops of the ornaments now look silver, but I wanted this silver color to be a little bit more prominent. I took out an envelope that I have with all of my metallic scraps in it, and I found that I had this nice shiny silver paper, and I thought that this would be perfect for the tops of the ornaments. So I just hand cut out a couple of rectangles and glued those down at the tops. I don't often make shakers. I really love them, but I don't make them too frequently. Sometimes I'll make a little bit of a mess when I'm pouring the sequins in, but everything worked out really well with these shakers. I'm using a piece of the pattern paper that we got in this month's kit. I love the red background with all of the snowflakes, and I thought that the white ornaments were a good contrast with the red background. I'm using some adhesive to attach the ornaments down. I'm using some ATG adhesive. I do go back and glue these ornaments down. They're not super heavy, but they're a little bit heavy, so I wanted to make sure that I had a strong adhesive on the back. The photo that I'm using in this layout is a photo of both of my daughters on Christmas Eve a couple of years ago. We always celebrate Christmas Eve at my sister's house, and it's something that I really look forward to. It's one of my favorite days. I'm really hoping that this year everybody stays well and we'll be able to celebrate the holidays together. Unfortunately, last year, and I still haven't really gotten over this, our Thanksgiving and our Christmas were both interrupted because members of my family had COVID, and it was really a bummer. We did the best we could to make the most of it, but I'm very excited and hopeful that we have a regular Christmas this year. I wanted to add a little something to the ornaments. For another layout that I made using this kit, I took a whole bunch of pine needle die cuts and I embossed them using some Moxy embossing powder. The color is called Metallic Evergreen. And I added 2 coats of the embossing powder. I just think that makes a big difference in the appearance of the die cuts. So then after I had embossed them, I began to arrange them on the ornaments. I wanted each of the ornaments to look a little bit different, so I was trying to vary the arrangement of the pine needles. To cut out these branches, I use a number of different pine needle dies from my stash. In some cases, I use the entire die cut, and in other cases, I trim them down a little bit just so that they would fit better on the ornaments. But now I'm pretty happy with the way they're positioned, and once again, I'm using ATG adhesive. However, I know that I will have to go back and glue these pine branches into place. I really didn't want to glue them down right away because sometimes when I look at a layout later on, if I take a little break and I go back to it, I will see something that I really want to change. So I hate to use wet glue until I'm sure that I'm okay with everything the way it's placed on the layout. The shakers are very prominent, but I wanted to add a few other embellishments to the page. So here I am using a number of the die cuts in the ephemera pack that we got. I'm using some red and blue ornaments. I tuck those in with the shaker ornaments, and I also use those ornaments in the cluster to the right of the photo. I also use some of the poinsettias from the die cut pack. They have a white border to them. I don't always want a white border, but I can always cut a border off if I don't want it. And on this particular layout, I like the way there was a white border around many of the embellishments because it helped them to stand out from the background. But now that I have a number of the embellishments in place, I thought that it would make sense to take those pine branches and bring them over to the other side of the layout. So that's what I'm doing here. I am using some of the pine branches and I'm tucking them into that little cluster on the right. I also found a number of bows in the kit this month, so I thought that I would use those at the top of 2 of the ornaments. And then I was thinking that it would be nice to have some of those smaller ornaments popped up. So I'm using some fun foam and I am cutting it and putting it behind the ornaments. I recently found that some of the embellishments that I attached to the page with only ATG adhesive that had foam on the back had fallen off. So now I'm always very careful to add some wet adhesive like gel glue to the back of anything that has foam on it. Sometimes I don't do that until later on because I like the option of moving things around the page. But it is important to go back and secure those things down with some wet glue. Or if you're more decisive than I am, just do that from the start. I wasn't expecting to put a cluster on the right-hand side of the photo at all. I thought I would just have the ornaments on the left-hand side. But then it looked to me like it was a little bare on the right-hand side, so I don't want to make that cluster too prominent because to me the most important part of the embellishments is the shakers that are on the left, but I did like the idea of adding a couple of embellishments and balancing out the ornaments. Since I still had some of the pine branches that I embossed left over, I thought that I would see if I liked them tucked into the embellishment cluster on the right hand side, and I did like the way it looked. I thought that it brought the two clusters together. I like to repeat embellishments on a page. I don't always do that, but I think that it really helps the layout to look cohesive when there are some embellishments that are repeated. So on this layout, I picked out all of the larger die cut ornaments, and I also picked out a number of the larger bows that were in the die cut pack. And I just think that repeating those elements helps to bring a cohesiveness to the layout. I popped the banner that says Merry and Bright up on some foam, and I placed it to the right of the photo. I just thought that that added a nice little touch and kind of helped to ground the photo. I trimmed down some of the pine branches so that they would fit in the spots that I wanted to tuck them. On this layout, I used quite a variety of different dies to make the pine branch die cuts. So the pine branches don't all match, but I like the variation. Sometimes I like to match them, and sometimes I like to vary them. And on this layout, I varied them. I added some more of the iridescent dots that I had on the left-hand side to the right-hand cluster, again, to tie everything together. I used one of the die cut pieces that said Christmas Eve as my title. I love that there were a number of embellishments that said Christmas Eve on them in this kit. I see many titles that say Christmas Day on them or 25, but I don't see so many for Christmas Eve. And since I take the most photos on Christmas Eve, I was very happy to see that. In order to tie the title in with the rest of the layout, I use a pink poinsettia. You could see there are a couple of other pink poinsettias on the page. And I'm also going to emboss some smaller pine branches. And then I add some more of those same jewels to the title as well. And I think that that will help the title to look like it is part of the same page. That completed the layout, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video, everybody. I really hope that you enjoyed it. In the description box, you'll find the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website. You can also find the links to all of the social media for My Creative Scrapbook. I would recommend that you check out their Facebook group. You can see what all of the designers have created with all of the kits for this month. I hope that you have a fantastic day. Thank you again for watching this video, and I will see you again very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.